Here's a question that sounds super simple. Why do people actually pay their taxes? But for economists, oh man, it is this huge, fascinating puzzle. It's all about our behavior, how we think about risk, and it affects every single one of us. So let's dive right in. So why doesn't everyone cheat on their taxes? I mean, really think about that. Because when you actually crunch the numbers, you look at the odds of getting caught, you look at the penalties, well, it kind of seems like way more people should be cheating. The real puzzle here isn't why some people cheat, it's why so many of us don't. And look, the stakes here are massive. 17%. That's the estimated slice of income tax in the US that just doesn't get paid. We're talking about a huge pile of money, a tax gap that puts a strain on the entire system. So yeah, figuring out why this happens, it's absolutely critical. Okay, so before we can really crack this puzzle, we've got to get our definitions right. Because there's this world of difference between two words that sound pretty similar: evasion and avoidance. It really all comes down to one thing, where the law draws a very specific line. All right, first up, tax evasion. Let's be clear, this is the illegal stuff. No gray area. We're talking about hiding income, getting paid under the table and not reporting it, or just flat out not filing your taxes. The key word here is illegal. It's breaking the law, plain and simple. Now, tax avoidance, that's a whole different story. This is 100% legal. It's all about using the tax code as it's written to lower your bill. Things like taking all the deductions you're entitled to, contributing to a 401k, that's all tax avoidance. It's not cheating, it's playing the game by the rules. And this quote from Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes just nails it. He basically said, the law draws a line, and when we call something evasion, it just means it's on the wrong side of that line. That's it, right there. Evasion is crossing the line. Avoidance is walking right up to it, but making sure you stay on the legal side. Okay, so let's set avoidance aside for a second and focus back on evasion, the illegal part. The first question economists asked was, why would someone do this? And their first crack at an answer was to treat it like, well, a rational choice, a calculated gamble. Yeah, these early models basically pictured the taxpayer as a gambler at a casino. You're sitting there thinking, okay, what's my potential win? What's my potential loss if I get caught? And what are the odds? It was all seen as this cold, hard calculation to get the best possible financial outcome for yourself. So let's break down this gamble. Step 1, you figure out the reward. That's simple. It's the cash you save in taxes. Step 2, you look at the penalty. Okay, what's the fine if I get busted? And then step 3, you weigh the odds. What's the actual probability that I'm going to get audited? According to this model, if the math works out in your favor, a totally rational person would say, yep, I'm taking that bet. Okay, sounds logical, right? But, and this is a huge but, here's the plot twist. This perfectly neat little model has a giant gaping hole in it. The second you apply it to the real world, the whole thing just falls apart. And here's the problem. The model predicts that people should be cheating on their taxes way more than they actually are. I mean, audit rates are super low for most of us, and the penalties aren't always that scary. So if we were all just rational gamblers, the IRS would be getting way less money. Clearly, something huge is missing from this equation. Something about us, about human nature. So, what's missing from the equation? If it's not just a simple bet, then what else is going on in our heads when we decide whether or not to be honest on our tax returns? Well, one of the first big aha moments came from looking closer at the penalty. The early models got a critical detail wrong. They assumed the fine was based on the income you hid, but that's not how it works. The fine is actually based on the unpaid tax. Now, that might sound like a small difference, but it's huge. It means that if tax rates go up, yeah, the reward for cheating goes up, but so does the penalty by the exact same proportion. So the odds of the gamble don't really change. That's a big piece of the puzzle right there. But the real answer, as you've probably guessed, is that it's just not a simple gamble. Period. The decision is messy and complicated, and it's influenced by all these real-world things that those early clean models just left out. So let's start adding those factors back in. I mean, think about it. Evasion isn't just a number on a page. It's often tied to a real underground economy. There are actual costs to hiding your money, what economists call concealment costs. It takes work. And, the tax agencies aren't dumb. The more you try to evade, the higher your chance of an audit probably gets. On top of that, sometimes the law is just so darn complicated, people are genuinely uncertain about what they're supposed to do. And all of this interacts with the legal ways people try to avoid taxes. But here's the biggest thing those early models missed, the stuff you can't really put in a spreadsheet. Things like our own sense of right and wrong, civic duty, maybe just guilt. That feeling of being a cheater is a really powerful force that the simple gamble model just completely ignores. Okay, so this is a fascinating puzzle for economists, but why should you and I care? Why does it matter? Well, because the answer has massive real-world consequences for how our governments build the very tax systems we all live with. And really, the key takeaway is this. Creating a good tax system isn't just a math problem. If you want it to work, if you want it to be effective and fair, you have to understand people. You have to get the messy, complicated, sometimes totally irrational way we think about money and our obligations. It's about psychology, not just spreadsheets. And that really leads to the final point here. Effective tax policy isn't just about tinkering with the tax rates. It's about designing the entire experience, the whole architecture. From how likely an audit is, to how big the penalties are, to how confusing the forms are. It's all about shaping our choices and trying to make paying your fair share the easiest, most logical thing to do. So I'll leave you with this final, kind of provocative question. We all complain about how complicated the tax code is, right? It's a nightmare. But what if that complexity isn't a bug? What if just maybe it's a feature? A deliberate way to create uncertainty, to make us all a little more cautious, and in the end, a little more honest. It's definitely something to chew on next tax season.